Welcome to the Greater Arlington Chamber of Commerce here in our Sargent Studios. I'm Bryan Weatherford. I'll be your host today. As always, we like to spotlight our different members here at the Chamber, and today we have a very special member. Frankly, all the members are special, but this man actually has won major awards within the Chamber, as he should. He and his company are very award-winning in a variety of ways. We're going to get into a little bit of everything today with our guest, Mr. Bob Kembel, President, Head Honcho, Nehemiah Companies. Bob, welcome. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate you being here. It's changed a little bit, hasn't it?
I like the pigs.
Well, tell me, Nehemiah Company. There's a question I've always wanted. I've been familiar with you long before I met you. I was familiar with Nehemiah Company. But is there a story behind the name? Because it's kind of a unique name.
There is, and I don't tell it all the time. A lot of people don't ask, so I appreciate you asking.
Sure.
So I had my background was, I came from a family of, my mom was Polish immigrant, my dad was from Kentucky, and they didn't have a lot of money. My dad was the first one to go to college and start his own business. And when I got in high school, he started being successful. I was the baby of the family. And so it was always had to work for other people. So I worked for banks, money center banks in Houston, and learning the business and financing developments, and at the same time had some mentors that really helped me growing in my faith and in my marriage. And so my faith became increasingly more important to me. And I'd always had a dream of Lord willing, having our own company. And in around 2012, and I had been to Colorado as a developer, working for wealthy families, and in Dallas working for wealthy families. And in 2012, it just felt this overwhelming. You're going to be out on your own. And I got butterflies and nervous, and I'm like, what's that mean? I'm going to be out on my own. And about that time, the guys I was working for, they said, "Hey, Bob, we think it's time for you to go out on your own."
Oh, okay.
And I went, "Oh, I don't know, what does that mean?" And I was praying about that. What does that mean? What does that look like? And I don't know that I had ever been to the book of Nehemiah in Scripture. It's Old Testament, and I kind of spent most of my time in the New Testament. And so I'm praying, and my wife's like, "I can see you're stressed about this. Go spend some time with the Lord." And you sit, you grab your Scripture, and you sit there, and the Lord said, "Nehemiah, go to Nehemiah." And so I found this book of Nehemiah and read it. Like, what does that mean? He was worked for the king and cupbearer, and he rebuilt Jerusalem, and he got letters of safe passage from the king, and then he ministered to the people in it. And so 10 years later, 12 years later, after all this, that's exactly what we are. We partner with the king, and we're developers, but we go where the king wants us to go. Our king's a government, right? Look, it's the city of Arlington, state of Texas, county of Tarrant, or other counties we work with. But we go with a specific mission, and that is to rebuild the city and minister to the people in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so our Viridian that we rebuilt, that area was, as we all know, challenging to say the least.
Sure.
And we've been invited to the Lamar Collins overlay to help breathe life back into what was a kind of crime, drug dealing place. And it's now this beautiful little jewel in the city of Arlington.
Well, we're going to get to that in a little bit, because you're underselling it a little bit. I'm a native Arlington guy, so yes, I have stories we'll share off the air of what that place used to be like. But I want to back up a little bit, because I've always been impressed with your faith, because you're a very faithful guy. You don't really push it on people. You just live it, and that's very impressive, to the point you briefly touched on your mission statement, but I took it on myself to write it down. I didn't want to mess it up. A mission statement is to restore hope by knowing Him and making Him known.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
Yeah, creating value to restore. They missed a little bit, but creating value, probably on our website. Creating value to restore hope by knowing Him and making Him known. So if we don't create value, we're not excellent. We don't deserve to be in business.
Mm-hmm.
And value creation is an important part. Leaving something better than you found it, however you measure that.
Fair enough.
And then, but why do you do it? Is it and is your organization a place where hope is restored? So that's a high bar. You're creating a culture inside your company that people want to be in. And we survey our people to get an indication of how we're doing. And it's hard. Some years we do good. Some years they're like, you need to raise your game, crank it up a notch. But we ask and we care, right? And then the knowing him and making him know, we feel like the wisdom in the scripture is valuable for people, but we don't weaponize scripture, correct? And the wisdom that's there, whether you're a believer or not, if you apply it to your business or your life, you're going to be successful. And so there's a lot of non-believers who are actually knowledgeable about the Proverbs and what's in there, and they adopt some of those philosophies, and the consequences of the good decision-making they make are the same. So I try and encourage people, even if you're not a Christian or a believer, at least understand the wisdom that's in the scripture and apply it to your life. And I think lastly, we need Christian business owners who don't weaponize the scripture and who do finish well. And what does finish well look like? Well, for our company, we'd like to never sell the company. We'd like to transition it so generationally it can grow and it can continue the mission. And maybe more and more of the profits can go into ministry. So we take a percentage of our profits. They go into all of our inner city ministries. Right? But we'd like to see that grow over time. And there's this whole philosophy about, well, when are the barns full? So you don't build more barns, right? And so if you reach a point where your kids are through college and your house is paid for, and in my case, I have a special needs wife and I'm going to make sure she's cared for. But at some point, it's like, don't build more barns. And as the company ages and goes to the next generation, there should be more available to do more. So that's what it kind of looks like to us when it's working. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that part. And if you don't mind, I want to get into some of the nitty gritty, the dirt work, if you will, of what you've done with Nehemiah from a real estate development standpoint. And got to talk about Veridian. Again, I grew up here. What in the world were you thinking? What was your vision to think we can pull this off? Had you done similar projects before in other markets, or walk me through that story? So in the 90s, I got an opportunity. I was going to start Kembel Homes. Okay. The bank, believe it or not, Guaranty Bank in Dallas, who I work for, some of the old Republic Bank guys, and worked for Temple and started this bank. I did their out-of-state lending to builders. And I fell in love with the home building industry. And I said, I'm going to get out of banking and go build homes. And they said, why don't you try it first? And I said, you'd let me do that? And they said, sure. So I did a couple of houses. And in the middle of that, I got invited to go. A client heard I was going to leave banking and said, why don't you come to Denver, Boulder, and let us teach you how to do master plan communities and home building, and we want to sell the company to the employees. And we think you'd be a good leader for them, and we'll train you. So they hired a corporate psychologist and an organizational development lady, and they worked for me for 2 years, beating me up. That was brutal. And you need that, when you're young and arrogant, you need somebody to tenderize you a little bit. But what we learned in the master plan community business there, specifically, we were building homes in Stapleton, and Forest City was a developer. We were actually building homes there. And it was a mess. Stapleton, the edges around, there was environmental contamination. There were some rough neighborhoods, it had a lot of similarities to Veridian. So when I came to Texas and I saw an infill site, and Stapleton was in the middle of the city, and it was so unbelievably successful. There were local builders who wouldn't go in there because they thought it was too rough. Okay. We went in there because it was infill and killed it. I mean, it just worked beautifully. Because why? It's close to jobs. Yeah. And it was big enough to create an environment. So Veridian was saying we had this beautiful ecosystem that had been ravaged, really abused. Mm-hmm. But I could see DFW Airport and Las Colinas in the entertainment district, and all the infrastructure in the city is right there, like 360, 161, 183, 114, I-30. They're all right there. So for us, it was so obvious that this is a great location, but you got to figure out how to mitigate the challenges around the site, right? And work with FEMA and the Corps of Engineers and these complex permits.
It's just interesting. It seems like everything you've done in your life led you to that moment to get involved big time with Arlington, and now you've got it, and it's always changing. Every time I turn around, there's a new aspect coming in with reading the stuff across the street and everything, and you're actively involved in all of it.
That's when your faith comes in. I don't believe that's a coincidence, number one.
No, not at all.
All the finance background, all the planning, organization development background, all of that, I've used all of it and then some, and learned a lot more. And there were some great attorneys, Ray Hutchison, Ray Hutchison, Ray took me under his wing and was training me on how to use the legislature to finance public infrastructure, because that's important. And so all of that, and I really do feel like there's a point in your life where the Lord decides, can I trust Him with these resources? And when you're poor, you're more trustworthy, right? and because you don't have anything, you're like, well, of course, Lord, I'm going to do whatever you tell me. And so the real challenge is now, after you've been successful, are you still trustworthy? Are you still going to be a good steward of the resources, or are you going to depend on your own success or wealth or whatever? And I think that becomes the next test for Bob, right? Is how do we continue to shepherd this? But that's how we learned. I really do believe that the Lord said, okay, I've trusted you with a little, you've been faithful, I'm going to trust you with a little more.
Right.
And hopefully He'll continue to find us suitable and worthy.
I think it's more than fair to say that it was His plan all the way along. I mean, He had a plan long before you realized it.
No, there's no one who believed Veridian would be what it is today, including me. And it's way more successful than even I thought it.
Isn't that something? Well, okay, so Veridian is maybe one of the biggest things that people are familiar with you with.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, be truthful, I'd been to Nehemiah Coffee several times before I knew it was yours. I mean, the name caught me, but I didn't put two and two together.
Yeah.
How did that come about, to get in the coffee business of all things?
Well, I had promised Trey, when he was Economic Development Director, Trey, city manages him.
Sure.
When we did the plan for the Lamar redevelopment and Arlington Commons, there was a rendering, and we're real careful with rendering. Most developers will show the city rendering.
Sure.
And there's no way they'll ever build anything that looks like it.
No.
Because it would take 50 years for the trees to get that. But we actually render the trees we're going to put in. And so we had showed Trey on that corner that there would be some kind of restaurant commercial thing. And we're all about creating communities, whether they're physical communities or something, more group communities. And the coffee idea seemed like a great way to create a sense of community. And the secret sauce was we could treat that like an amenity, and a lot of the cost to build that space could be absorbed in the apartment economics. That's where the finance background comes in.
Sure.
You could never afford to do a coffee shop as nice as the Nehemiah Company on the economics of something that's barely going to make much money, if any.
Right.
And so we embedded it in those economics, and so it is allowed to function at more of a break-even level. But it provides great jobs, and it provides us really crazy good environment. And we built, because of Carrie's experience, we built a handicap bathroom that's more than just a normal handicap bathroom. If you're a paraplegic or a wheelchair, there are very few places you can go that have changing tables.
Okay.
And so in that bathroom, there's a motorized changing table that can meet whatever wheelchair level you're in, and your caregivers can help you. So now we've got rehab centers and places like that can bring their people where they can never go on an outing.
Right.
They can now come to the Nehemiah Coffee Company like normal people, right? And have an outing. And if they don't have to run back to the rehab center if they need to go to the bathroom. So those little details, that's what makes us different. So the Nehemiah Coffee Company is our gift to the city for all the years that they've gifted us with the opportunity to do the things we get to do. And to the extent that it's the numbers keep climbing. I mean, we haven't even been open a year yet, and we're real close to break even. So what I thought we'd have to subsidize is probably got to start making money.
Good.
And we'll take those profits and we'll put them in our foundation.
Absolutely.
And so that's not our core business. We don't need that money. So if it works the way I think it may work, it may surprise all of us, and we'll get to do it again somewhere else.
Well, it's again, I had no idea that you were involved with it. Make total sense, because even when you go inside of Nehemiah Company, you go upstairs and you look and you can see symbols in the walls. I'll just say, for example, they have a bit there. Okay, now it all makes sense.
And from the street, you see that light
absolutely
through, and you catch the little, it's subtle, but if we can gently direct or encourage people,
I picked up.
We'll do that.
I picked up on it. Yeah. It's great, and it's the music, and people can go online and learn more about what's going on.
We have a little kid area that's up on a stage with tables and chairs around it on the outside where the mamas and papas can sit. And we have story time for the little ones. But that stage converts to open mic night. And we have this whole Arlington music scene that will come on Thursday nights to open mic night. And we have a chess night, we have a trivia night, and we're seeing more and more and more groups that are like, how do we get people connected? And after COVID, that's hard. And I had wanted Starbucks to go there, but Starbucks didn't want to do it. And we were going to give them the space, which shocked me. I couldn't even get them to talk to me. But I think their model is moving. They're moving more into how many people can we get through the drive-thru.
Correct.
And the old Starbucks I fell in love with in Seattle when I was out there as a young man was more of what the Nehemiah Coffee Company is.
Okay.
And so I'm glad we got to do it. And
again, another seed was planted, and you were able to take everything together and get it. Well, I got to switch gears here.
Okay.
Because you've been personally and professionally actively involved with the chamber over there. You won our Star Award a couple of years. That's a big deal for us. We don't just dole those out, but you're very deserving of that award.
Thank you.
So because you've been so active in the chamber for so long, I've got to ask you, I mean, why? Because I would think a man of your stature could certainly be successful without the chamber, and yet you continue to give to the chamber. So what does the chamber bring to the table for you?
I always believe that life is about the who, not the what. We can all do different things, but the relationships that you build and interact with for whatever season, some people you only see them for a short season, and and you move on. Other people you just tend to do life with, and the chamber has an opportunity to influence a lot of lives through the public policy things that we're involved in. It's a place to come together and figure out how to solve complex problems in a safe environment where people are willing to collaborate. And so everything good about the chamber is about connecting people. I will say, I think Arlington as a community and this chamber as a community is unique in that you can be not from here, like I wasn't from here.
Uh-huh.
And I have been in other communities where if you're not from there, you don't get to seat at the table to have a conversation.
You're an outsider.
Yeah, your ideas don't matter that much. And that's never been the case in Arlington. So the benefit of that is for Arlington in this chamber is I moved my family here. I moved my business here. We moved our life to Arlington because we felt welcome here. It's the first place really in my career that I felt rooted.
Nice.
And the Mission Arlington is unique in the United States and the world. And that, because of that, it actually was at a Star Award thing, 15 years ago when Miss Tilly got the Star Award, then I met her. And we have been great friends and have been working together over 10 years now.
Nice.
And so that's another thing about this city that I love.
And it's all from the chamber. It's like to say around here, Bob, together we succeed. And you're certainly a living example of that in so many different ways.
Yeah, it takes a long time in business to get things done, and speed matters. And if you're an active member of the chamber, it speeds everything up.
Nice.
And so the benefit to people who really have the best interest of the community at heart is they can find like-minded folks here, and that if you got a good idea and your heart's right, man, we can pour jet fuel on whatever your dream is through this chamber.
I appreciate you sharing that, and it means a lot to me as a chamber person, but to all of us as chamber members to have you on board, and you're so welcoming when new people come on, and I appreciate that. So, we're done today. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Learned a lot about you. There's so much more to learn. May have to have you back sometime.
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me.
For now, we do appreciate you. And folks, as always, we appreciate you being with us because, as Bob knows, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to say it again, together we succeed. Thank you much. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, man. That was good stuff.
Enjoy it.